So friends, we can welcome to the Cunsult webinar on the art of writing a novel and the craft of getting a publisher and to get published. We are delighted to have in our midst four very, very distinguished authors. And I will quickly introduce them and then hand over to our moderator, Mr. Bharat Wakhlu. Let me start with Kiran Manral. Kiran is one of India's topmost novelists. She published her first novel, The Reluctant Detective, in 2011 and followed that up with other novels, Once Upon a Crush, All Aboard, The Face at the Window, Saving Maya, Missing, Presumed Dead, and Kitty Party Murders. She's also written nonfiction. Karmic Kids is an introduction to parenting, Bloody Good Parenting, and The Boy's Guide to Growing Up, in which, while writing her nonfiction, she's also tied up with authors such as Ashwin Sanghi to give their insights into subjects such as parenting. Kiran is the founder of India Helps, a network of volunteers who assist disaster victims, and has earlier worked for Cosmopolitan and Times of India. Our second author today, Atima Mankotia, is the author of the novels Staring at the Square Moon and Better Than Sex. She's a communications and HR professional with experience of working in all forms of media. She has been a professor and has taught communication to graduate and postgraduate students and is currently with the United Nations Environment Programme. Our third author, Suchita Malik, is the author of several novels, Indian Mem Sahab Chronicles, Scent of the Soil, and Nest of the Recluse. She teaches English language and literature in the Government College for Men, Chandigarh. She's a specialist in American literature, and she writes middles, feature articles, op-eds, and travelogues from time to time. Our moderator and author, Bharat Wakhlu, is the author of the novel Close Call in Kashmir, and he's currently located also in Kashmir, it so happens. And he's written many acclaimed books on management, total quality, navigating the maze for fast track success, restoring values for good governance. He's been a member of the distinguished Tata Administrative Service and has held important positions within the Tata Group and other multinationals. His new book on Tata's leadership experiment is due to be released by HarperCollins soon. He has scripted impactful training films on the skill of assertiveness, the management of quality, and living with values. Apart from being a management consultant, an executive coach, and an international keynote speaker, Bharat is an avid golfer, a drone pilot, and is fluent in 6 languages, including German. So a warm welcome to all of you. And now I will hand over to Bharat to take over and carry this forward. Bharat,
Yes.
it's your baby now. Please go
Thank
ahead.
you. Thank you very much, Raghav. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and a very, very warm welcome to all of you, and especially to my distinguished panelists, Kiran, Suchita, Atima. It's a pleasure to be with you all, and I'm looking forward to a scintillating conversation on the art of writing novels and getting published. So, I think we all know that creative writing is a very lonely effort. It's a solo effort. We have to write quietly in the dead of night at times when the family is all asleep. And there are so many people who approach us authors and ask us, how did you get this plot? How did you write this? What was the best time? What was your muse? What inspired you? And I think today's conversation with our distinguished panelists is aimed at actually helping to answer these questions. A request to all those who are not on the panel, kindly switch off your microphones because there's an echo coming. So I'd be grateful if those who are in the audience just switch off their microphones, please. Thank you very much. So we intend to have this little conversation around what is it that really makes a credible story, or how do you present a credible story? Every one of us really has stories to share. Everyone's life is a story, as a matter of fact. But what's important is, how do some people get down to be get down to writing these? Just a second, I may have to mute somebody. Okay. So a lot of people inquire, well, so what have you really done to make this whole thing come alive, the story of yours? So, okay. So without let me go straight to the panelists now and request them to share their experience. So starting off with Suchita first. Suchita, tell us briefly about your journey as an author and how you wrote the first novel of yours in about the IAS and spouses and so on. So please go ahead. We're eager to hear your story.
Thank you so much. And first of all, I welcome all of you and thank you for inviting me here and wanting to listen to what all I have to say. Well, how I came about to be a novelist is I call myself a writer by chance. By chance because it all started with a peace accord. Peace accord with my husband. Because as you said, my husband is a civil servant. I come from a family of civil servants. He's retired now. But in the first 9 years of our service, we had to shift luggage at least 11 times. And one day I was so sick of it and I was so angry that I just sat down and I wrote something which I later called a middle. And I called it the peace accord. And you won't believe that I just wrote it in hand and I took a 25 paisa ticket, posted it myself and sent it to the Tribune in Chandigarh because we were in Chandigarh at that time. And within 5 to 6 days, it was published. So it was probably the anger had subsided, but the intoxication of seeing your name in print lingered. So first middle was there. I felt very nice about it, and it gave way to another middle, then another middle, then another middle. And somehow the longing to see your name in print lingered in my mind. Side by side, I was teaching in a college. I was teaching them English literature. I was teaching them American literature. So I started with writing features and middles and travelogues and articles and all of these. And I wrote for about a decade or so. And well, one day, then my husband gets transferred to the government of India and we come to Delhi. And I started working on a postdoctoral project called the Indian Man of Letters. And in connection with that, I went and met the legendary Khushwant Singh. And I just took, my file of 70 odd middles and articles and features, etc. And I just asked him, as the last question everyone asks, what is your advice for a budding writer? So he looked at the file and he said, enough of these. I think you should now write a novel. I say, novel? Oh no, I can't write a novel. It must be a daunting task. He's saying, no, not at all. Uh, every writer's first novel is autobiographical or at least semi-autobiographical. So you must try your hand at it. I said, no, 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 I can't write it. But I came back and this idea again lingered in my mind. And that's how one thing that he told me, you always write about what you know best. So I sat down and I thought, what is it that I know best? Well, I came from, as I said, well, the backdrop was such, I was an integral part of the civil service. I thought I knew it much better. I knew other fields also, but I know why, but that's how the concept of Indian Mem Sahib, my first novel, was born. And I thought I will make it an untold story of a bureaucrat's wife. I checked the market. There weren't many at that time on that subject. So that's how I took it up. And that's how starting my first journey. Indian Mem Sahib's Chronicles, its sequel. Third is Women Extraordinaire, which is not about civil service, which is about the story of 3 generations of women and the backdrop of 100 years. Then came the fourth one, Scent of the Soil. Again, the backdrop, it's not about civil service, but the backdrop is civil service. Then followed it last year, I had my 5th novel, which I called it The Nest of the Recluse, which I thought I had to take the story to its logical end. So my writing career and my teaching career both flourished at the same time.
Wonderful,
That's my
wonderful.
journey.
What a beautiful
Realm of fame.
story of your how you started to write. Okay, Atima, we're moving on to you now. You have written a number of women-centric novels. Novels, in fact, Better Than Sex might be a very titillating title, but I know it's a story of Sunaina's journey and how she comes to terms with her new life. So tell me, Atima, what has your story been like? How have you become a writer? And what's been your unique journey to your first novel?
Thank you, Bharat, for asking that question. And I was very interested. It was very interesting to hear about Suchita and her journey. My journey is probably far more torturous than hers. I was born in a family of professors, writers, poets, and I was naturally inclined towards literary pursuits. But I became a journalist and an editor, and for 25 years I was working with different media. And as happens to most of us in life, we get busy with our professional and personal lives, and our bucket list and our desires of writing. I always wanted to write. It gets left behind. So a little late in life I said, okay, I think I need to start writing. So I started writing little bit, over a period of time. I wrote one story, then I wrote another story, and I wrote about 3 stories. And then I wanted to finally assess whether are they good enough. I never felt confident that, are they good enough to get published. I didn't want to spend time that I didn't have on something that will not see the light of the day. So, I went through the whole rigmarole of publishers and, taking advice. And then gradually over a period of time, the thing is, what I felt more strongly about, as Suchita said, the first novel is a bit autobiographical. I wouldn't say it's completely autobiographical, but it is all the experiences over a period of time, the people we meet, the relationships, the people we observe, we put it all together and create the first novel. There's a intensity and a depth to the first novel. So that is how I wrote my first novel. It deals with the concept of abuse, specifically, on, the very overt abuse, sexual and physical abuse, also the very subtle psychological, as well as, the kind of, emotional abuse faced by women. So that was my first book. And the second book is called Better Than the Sex, which is actually a social satire with a tongue-in-cheek kind of thing on the social practices that are happening in India, and maybe they require a relook, whether they need changing or not. So yes, I do feel a little strongly about gender issues, and that is how my passion for writing, came about. And I'm writing my third novel, which is a historical fiction, and it's a psychological thriller. So different kind of genres, but the basic thread is, with strong women protagonists.
Wonderful, wonderful, great. Okay, let's move on to Kiran now. And Kiran, you are a prolific writer as well. In fact, the introduction indicated that you started writing in 2011, and yet in these 11 years, you've churned out, I think, 5 or 6 books. So tell us, how did you get to writing a fairly diverse genre of books? So, and what was the inspiration or the trigger?
Thank you so much, Bharat. And it's been 11 years and actually 12, because December 2011 was when my book was published, my first book, and it's been 14 books, Bharat. So,
Wonderful.
so
Sorry,
it's been-
I probably hadn't done my homework adequately, but 14 books is
No,
amazing.
no, not an issue at all, because a number of them are on Juggernaut and other online apps, so you don't really see them listed out on Amazon. But yes, my journey began much like Suchita and Atima. Luck by chance, one was a journalist. And I think back in my childhood, in some misguided moment, I told my mother that I would be an author when I grew up. And she held me to it. So every year she would say, where is your book coming out? When are you writing? And I'm at the Times of India, I'm very busy and important right now. I don't have time. Or I'm at Cosmopolitan now, and I don't have the time to write a book. I'm having a baby. I don't have the time to write a book. I'm bringing up, life tip
Life.
over,
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
Suchita said. And finally, I think I was about to hit 40 when she asked me yet again, when are you going to write your book? And that's when it hit me that, I'm hitting 40 now. High time I did something about this. And it was basically to get my mother off my back. The first book came about. So it's been a journey. It's been a good, fun journey. And I'm glad she was so persistent.
Wonderful. So obviously there has to be somebody in your life who's, if not inspiring you, at least prodding you into doing what you have said you're going to do. So a lot of people in the audience, comprises people who probably have a lot of stories to share, but haven't gotten down to writing anything so far, but who'd be interested to get published. So I'd like to ask you, Suchita, to begin with, what kind of impediments did you face before you started your first novel? And is there something that you think worked for you, which might maybe help a lot of the other people who are listening to this conversation? How do you get over that little, that hesitation, that little hump that many of us experience before we start something new?
Yeah, writing is never an easy task. It's really difficult, and it's a complex art. You need to have all the facts. You need to find your facts, then you need to tweak them to suit the flight of your imagination. Or it's not so simple that one day in the morning you just get up and you think that, oh, well, I'm going to write a novel. If you do that, if you just get up one day and you think that I'm going to write a novel, that means there is something, some story, something lingering in your mind. There is something in your mind that you want to write about, that you want to share with readers. So, well, the first thing is you have to have a story. You want to tell a tale. You want to tell a story. You may call it a story. You may call it a theme. You may call it a subject matter. It can come from anywhere. It can be a personal experience. It can be something that has moved you very deeply, something that has had very lot of impact on you, or you just want to be a famous writer. But the thing is, if you have thought you want to write a story, that means there is a theme lurking in your mind.
Of course.
Now, of course, that means we start with step one. You have a story to tell. You have a tale to tell. So you have already underlined the subject matter or the theme. You know very well in your heart of hearts, what is it that you want to write about?
True.
Now, when you have thought about, when you are about to write, then you have outlined the subject matter, then you need to find some kind of a, something that triggers the story on. Say something like a conflict or a discord, or in literary terms, we call it central opposition. It's like a villain in a movie, that if there is no villain, the storyline will not, move forward. So you have already taken a theme. There is already some kind of conflict that you are going to highlight, maybe an individual's point of view that is coming in conflict with the societal norms or whatever. Next step is, how do you do that? Who is going to do that for you? So you got to find your characters. You have to look for your characters. Now you look for your characters, you look around. The characters are everywhere. You meet them every day. You meet them at every step. They can come from anywhere, your relatives, your friends, your acquaintances, your colleagues, anywhere. The life is full of characters. You just have to pick up, you just have to choose the characters. Sometimes even the characters may choose you, or you create a character. You create a character or you choose a character, you imbue them with qualities, you attribute some facets to them, you add glitter to them or dust to them according to the need of your story, and you get going. So you have the theme, you have the central opposition, you have the characters, and the characters are going to talk. So the next thing is you have the dialogue. And sometimes these characters stay in your mind. You have maybe come across somebody 8 years back, and it lingers in your mind. To give you an example, say a novel, a great novel like Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, everybody has read. Now, the preceding novel was Adventures of Tom Sawyer, which everybody has read as an adventure tale. Now, Huckleberry Finn was a character in that novel, and Mark Twain says, the story stayed in my mind for 8 years, the character stayed in my mind for 8 years, then I picked him up and I thought, I will run him through life. I will run him through the mill of life. So he somehow creates situations, incidents, episodes. Wonderful. And the Mississippi River. The Mississippi River becomes the road road to freedom, to freedom for Huckleberry's point of view, and from slavery and the sense of alienation. So all these things are traveling together. If you see the theme, the characters, the central opposition, the dialogue, they have entwined themselves and they travel together, which gives it the structure to the novel. Plus the writer's tools. If you will have another half a minute, I can say it can be the stream of consciousness technique. It can be the first person point of view. It can be the third person. You have the writer's tools like symbolism, imagery, irony, humor, understatement. You combine all that and you have literature, which is exactly a mirror of life.
Wonderful, wonderful. But obviously, I like the structured manner in which you enunciated what needs to be done. Obviously, it does sound like hard work, which it is. But let's move on to Atima. So, Atima, in your understanding, what are those little impediments that can stall a potential writer from getting started? And what's been your experience on this?
Well, I think, one of the main impediments, of course, is a choice. These are choices of what genre you want to write. What are the topics that you want to write? So all of us struggle with the genre and the topic that we want to write about. The fact is, it is best to write about something you know, something you're familiar with. You cannot base a story in Mumbai if you've never visited Mumbai. You cannot talk about a culture if you've never been exposed to that culture. So the thing is, there is a dichotomy also in terms of, there are these social, political issues, environmental issues that writers are writing about and winning prizes. We have Nayanthara Sehgal, we have Arundhati Roy, we have Amitav Ghosh, writing about issues. Then we have the Ashwin Sanghvis and Amish taking, historical characters and turning them into beautiful stories. So the thing is, we tend to sometimes get pressured into saying, okay, what sells? What will make people think that we are, serious authors? What are the topics that, the publishers will think of us, take these topics that are current, that sell well. So we tend to, get probably embroiled in a bit of that. But I personally feel that we should, we should do what we find, what we have, what is our strength. For example, if we are good at humor, then we can just tell a simple tale. Look at PG Woodhouse. He just told a simple tale, no issues, nothing. He was just entertaining. Closer home, we have R.K. Narayan, who wrote wit, humor, satire. We have all these, horror, fantasy, by Stephen King, and we have J.K. Rowling. So I think we need, it's sometimes we tend to get pressured by what sells, what is it that will make people think of us and win us, more acclaim, or, maybe, win us a bestseller, be part of the bestseller list. So sometimes we think only with our head. I think we need to think with our head and our heart
Right.
to
Very
write a good
nice.
novel.
I like that. I think what you're saying, Atima, is that we have to allow our uniqueness as writers come forth. And also, we don't have to let concerns about how we'll get published come in the way of the creative process of actually writing a wonderful tale, a wonderful story. Okay, I'm curious to hear Kiran now. Kiran, 14 books in 12 years is commendable, and obviously there's something in your approach which prevents any, let's say, impediments from kind of holding you back. So can you share the magic of your writing approach with the audience, please? You're on mute, Kiran, so would you please unmute? Thank you.
So there is no magic, Bharat, to be very honest. Um, I think I'm just a moment.
No, we can hear you. We can hear you. Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead.
So there is no magic. Just to come back to what Suchita and Atima was saying earlier, write what you know. I beg to differ. In the humblest way possible, I think we would have no science fiction and no horror if we wrote only what we know. I think write what your imagination tells you would be better.
Wonderful.
And do your research well.
True.
So I have written about a Western Mediterranean cruise, and I have never been on one. And the high point of that book was when a reader asked me, which cruise have you been on? Not a reader, somebody was marketing Tirun Cruises, asked me, which cruise have you been on? I said, I've never been on a cruise. He said, but you wrote it like you were there. So that's research. So research is where everything comes in. I wrote about boarding school in the tea gardens of Darjeeling, and somebody asked me, which boarding school did you go to? That's research. So you don't know stuff, but your story demands something to be said there.
Wonderful.
So you bloody well research the hell out of it before you write. I completely agree that you have to get all the nuances and the context in place, and know the socio-cultural background about what you are writing, and know an appropriate culture. All these things are, very, they are like tap dancing in a minefield, so I won't get into that.
Right. Very good. No, I think, but yeah. Would everybody else please switch off their microphones? I'm hearing some wind blowing across somebody's phone. Thank you. Yeah. Yes, carry on, Kiran.
What is the magic to my writing? Bharat, there's no magic. It is just butt to seat and writing every single day, or working on a manuscript every single day. Wonderful. I write in the chaos of full home. My desk is in my living room. I have worked just for the past 2 years. I've been without employment, so to say, formal employment, but I have been working throughout my writing journey and taking on various projects. I think if you want to write, you will find the time and you will make the time if you have stories to tell. But I keep saying that treat writing as a discipline, treat it as a craft and an art and a discipline. You wouldn't tell a musician not to do their riyaz every day, wouldn't tell an athlete not to practice every day. Everyone does their riyaz. So as a writer, you put in your 500, your 1,000, your 2,000 words every single day, come what
Wonderful.
may. That's
Wonderful.
about it. There's no
Wonderful.
magic to it.
No, I think this resonates completely with me, Kiran. Thank you for sharing your experiences. You know, as a writer myself, when people ask me, okay, tell me, Bharat, how do you write? My answer is simple. Sit in front of your laptop, or if you write in longhand with your pen, sit in front of a sheaf of papers and just write at least 500,000 words a day. And if you follow that discipline, you will really, at the end of a month, you will have at least half a novel, if not a full novel, because 30,000 words is a sizable bit of writing. So 80,000 words and you have a full book. So there is definitely an element of discipline, hard work, and that's something I completely agree with. And as far as the muse is concerned, a lot of people said, okay, what inspired you? Now, my first novel was Close Call in Kashmir, which is a thriller. And it is a historical fiction. It's a thriller based in modern times, but there's a secret which gets, told, or which gets revealed a few hundred years earlier, a few hundred years earlier, and then that's the way the story weaves. There is no inspiration other than research and writing a credible plot. So I think there's what Suchita mentioned, what Atima said. Obviously, it fits into all this, and as Kiran very rightly mentioned, also, it is hard work, it is discipline, and if there is an impediment, and there'll be many impediments, as Kiran said, if you're living in a home and there are children and pets around you, phone calls, the bai comes in, the mali asks for directions. So something or the other is bound to be there because life happens. But in spite of that, I think the key theme that all our excellent panelists have shared with us today is that it is discipline that needs to be put into it's an important ingredient in the craft of writing. So before we move on to our next theme, which is about getting published, I also want to share with the audience a few trends that are to be seen these days. A lot of people are saying that, oh, the art of writing is it's going to finish because people aren't interested in reading books anymore. And I would like to reassure everybody that that is not going to happen in a long, long time, because stories make us human. Telling stories, sharing stories, and therefore we'll be seeing a lot of it. Yes, there might be different formats. A lot of people get self-published. A lot of people are publishing on their own, on the net. They're writing blogs first and so on. But there is no doubt that the art of writing, the art of storytelling is alive and kicking, and therefore is going to be staying for a long, long time. I would now like to switch gears, and we shall now talk briefly about the process of getting published. But before that, I'd like to request the audience to please use the chat box for any questions that you might wish to ask the panel, the esteemed panel members, on any of your queries, any of your concerns or doubts, and we'd be very, very happy to take up these questions at the latter part of the session. So I'm going to request Kiran to start off next. Kiran, a lot of people wonder, do we start writing first or do we start approaching publishers first? Now, my personal experience has always been, or rather, I have chosen as a discipline to first complete a book and then go and try and see who would like to get it published. What's been your approach, Kiran?
It's a very interesting question and one that has no straight answer, Bharat, to be very honest. So in my personal experience has been varied. It has spanned the gamut of writing For my first book, I wrote 3 chapters and sent it out. The editor I sent it out loved it and said she wanted to see the rest of the manuscript urgently because she was leaving for, I think it was the Frankfurt Book Fair or something. I had no rest of the book ready. I had nothing ready. So I worked like a maniac for the next, I will not say how many weeks because it is embarrassing. And I sent it out to her. And that was a reluctant detective.
Okay.
Okay. So I don't recommend that to anyone unless you're as crazy as me. You cannot finish a book reasonably in that kind of a deadline. It was stupidity on my part. Your approach is much more saner. Finish the book and send it out. Having said that, what also happens is sometimes you do get commissioned to write a book, in which case what you need to do is you approach a publisher with your concept, your sample chapters, an outline of the rest of the book, chapter-wise, how it is going to work out. And if they like it, then they may ask you to, work on it, or they may commission you to complete it if they like it very much. If they find it interesting, they may tell you, come back when it's ready and we'd like to see the completed manuscript. So that's another way it goes. But ideally, I think as long as it works this way for fiction, non-fiction is completely different. You send out a proposal, you have a sample chapter and you outline how your book is going to be like, and they commission you based on that. So you have your contract in hand even before you finish 3 or 4 chapters. So it depends completely on the genre of book and the kind of publishers you're working with. Some are comfortable with the completed manuscript. Some are willing to take the chance that the completed manuscript is as good as how you sold it to them. So
Right. Wonderful. No, I think that's wonderful. So I think what you said at the very beginning makes a lot of sense. It's also about what you find convenient and comfortable. But sticking to novels, I think you were lucky that you could send 3 chapters to somebody whom you knew, and she approved it. And sorry.
I didn't know her at all. I just
Oh,
took
you
a
didn't know.
chance.
You just took a chance and sent it to somebody who you knew about, and she was delighted with what she read, and then she asked for the rest of the book. Now that's one definite way. But let's ask Atima, what's been her approach? Would you unmute yourself, Atima, please? Yeah.
Yeah, so my journey has been a little more difficult than Kiran's. Firstly, I was working full time, so I didn't get too much time to write. So as I said, I wrote 3 short stories. I mean, they were actually long stories, and I didn't want to spend any more time on them, or take a break from work before I realized. I mean, before I felt that they were good enough to be published. So I sent those 3 stories to a publisher. I mean, I didn't know anybody, so I just sent them, and I waited for 2 months, and I didn't hear anything. So I think that black hole of not hearing anything is much worse than a rejection. Then I found somebody who worked in that publishing house, and I kind of approached them and said, can you find out what's happening? So they said they haven't had time to look at it, how publishing houses are busy. And I mean, I've been in the publishing industry myself, so I know how it works. New authors, unknown authors, their scripts get relegated to the junior most editors, who I have been training over last 25 years. So I've trained a lot of editors. So I mean, after pursuing for another month, I was told that they're not planning to go ahead with it. No reason given. So I sent it out to another publisher, and within a month, I did get an answer from a very young editor, who, I mean, was probably under training. She said that the plot and the story was very strong, but the writing was still not a little raw and not sophisticated. And then I went to a third person, a literary agent, through somebody I knew and through my publishing background. And she said she will not look at anything short stories because they don't sell, and most publishers are not willing to pick up short stories. Of course, my telling her about Jhumpa Lahiri's Interpreter of Maladies and winning a Pulitzer Prize didn't budge her. So then I learned 2 lessons from there. One is, maybe I needed to pitch a novel. instead of short stories. And secondly, I needed to tighten my writing. So I worked on that for the next few months because I was in the early stages of writing. So I could, weave the 3 stories into a novel and, create a larger novel. So that is what I did. And I got in touch with a friend who had just published, and she got me in touch with the publisher. And, he guided me, Readomania, and he guided me. And then finally, to write the book, I took a sabbatical from work. But the only thing I could take a sabbatical because I knew I had I had a book contract in my hand, and when it's over, it will get published. Otherwise, I don't think I would have had the courage to quit my job and take a sabbatical and, just write full time. So for me, it's been like that for my first book. Second book was, of course, easier.
So the motivation to get published, or the fact that you signed a contract, was a motivation then to write
Also to
more
take a break from work. It's very
and dedicate
important.
yourself to writing.
Yes.
Okay, so I think that reinforces the point about the discipline of writing, that you have to commit to it. It's tough. You have to avoid going to parties for many weeks and so on. But yeah, it's probably worth it when you get published. Okay, Suchita, what's been your journey as far as publishing is concerned? I know this is indeed a very tough part of the writing process. So how did uh, the your first book get published, and how did you get there?
Well, when I wrote my first novel, before that, I had been writing for the newspapers.
Correct. You talked about the middles. You wrote middles and
Middles,
plenty. Yes.
the travelogues, the features, and the articles in
Uh-huh.
most of the national newspapers. So, and that was never difficult. I would simply send them and they would get published. So maybe I thought that, I never thought about getting in touch with the publisher before I wrote my first novel. So when I first wrote it, and then I thought that, now one needs to find a reputable publisher. And I thought that this was rather a more difficult part of the publishing of, writing and then getting published. And then I started the basic way, which everyone starts. Like, I started writing to the publishers, and they would ask for 3 chapters. And then it requires a lot of time. It requires a lot of patience. It requires a lot of perseverance. You wait for their answers. And my first novel had come out in December 2008. So things were not so quick at that time. So, you wait for their response. First wait, and the responses that I got from almost all the publishers, whoever I contacted, were positive. They would ask for the manuscript, then you send the manuscript, then you again keep on waiting. You keep on waiting. Somebody would give if you want to meet them, they'll give a long gig. Somebody is going out of the country. Somebody is busy, this. But the responses I had got, maybe because of the title, because the title Indian Mem Sahib and the untold story of a bureaucrat's wife probably was an tempting one. And I never faced a single rejection. It were only the delays. So I thought whoever I'm able to strike a deal right in the beginning, the first one, I'll go for that. So, that happened. And even before I had got a yes from the Indian publishers, I had even contacted abroad, seeing on the net and which publishers, who accept from the budding authors. And there also, I had received a positive response. Only thing was, there was a lot of money involved. Like, so
they charge you for self-publishing.
I thought,
right.
why not? Yes, I thought, why not? First try your own. So the first, the first one the deal was done, and it was published without much. It was a long wait, but it was published.
So what I hear you all saying is that one has to be patient when it comes to publishing.
Involved. You have to keep trying and trying, and sometimes it can be humiliating as an author. At times you can be humiliating.
Of course,
you send 3 chapters. You have written so much, and that is being judged by a probably, somebody, as Atima said, or as Kiran said, like somebody at the, they are probably much younger to you. So at times you do feel, but if you have to, I mean, it's a whirlpool, you have to be into it and you have to find your own ways. First,
True.
when the first novel was published, then the second, third, well, then
Well,
there's
as
novels
Atima
were not
also
so
mentioned, it
difficult.
becomes
Yes.
increasingly easier once you're published. But I must share with you all something that I experienced. I finished writing Close Call in Kashmir around the time soon after I was transferred by my company, the Tatas, to New York. I was the president of Tata North America at that time, and I used my spare time over weekends to finish Close Call in Kashmir, which I had started a little earlier, but I got to complete it in New York City. So what's the next thing you do? You look for literary agents, and that's what I did. And I wrote to them, and I sent them a few chapters, and I got rejections. Not one, not two, not three, five, six. And so I attended a session. And that way I must admit that New York City is a place where you have so many wonderful writers, extraordinary people, And so there's also a huge ecosystem of people who offer you courses on how to get published, how to be able to deal with literary agents. So I went through a program like that. And one thing became very, very clear, that at the end of the day, everybody is looking for a great story. And let me also tell you that it isn't as if there's a standard for a great story. One commissioning editor or one editor in company A, in publishing house A, might find your story extraordinary, and quite a few others might not like it. And that's what happened with J.K. Rowling, who in order to disguise the fact that she was a single mother working on a dole, she actually called herself J.K. Rowling and got rejected until Harry Potter happened. So I think the lesson really is a lot of patience and keep on writing, because if you really want to be a writer, there is no question of you giving up just because you encounter one hurdle. So Kiran, any thoughts on that?
On the rejections.
On the rejections, yes, because I know it can be a huge thing for a first time author. And it's like the world has come crashing down. I've been working for 8 months, 1 year, and nobody likes this book. Nobody likes my manuscript.
I have 14
What's your
books.
advice
I
to
have
people?
14 books. I still get rejected. It's nothing personal. We should stop being oversensitive. It
I
doesn't
think
work. It doesn't work.
Absolutely.
No editor has anything personal about you. Just take a hard look at your manuscript and rework it until it's good enough for somebody to take it.
True.
So I've had rejections by a truckload. I could wallpaper my house with them. So I mean, we need to, when you become an author, Bharat, you need to be thin-skinned enough to absorb what life is giving you in order to create. And you need to be thick-skinned enough to take rejections
Absolutely.
and criticism. That's what a writer needs to be. And you take the rejections and you build from them. You see what is wrong, what that person may have not liked in it.
Correct.
But what could make the process a little simpler, I think now, of course, I have an agent for my commercial fiction. So, the rejections go to the poor chap and not to me. So I'm a little buffered from it. Mm-hmm. But I think what you do is to study the kind of publishers or editors who are commissioning a certain type of book, and then see if your book is similar to what the kind of books they are publishing, and then you stand a better chance of them liking your work and
Correct.
reading your work. And you have to do the market research. You can't be sending your book out randomly to everyone. See who is publishing the kind of book you have written. Send your books to them. Find who is the editor who has commissioned the book. Everything. The internet is a wonderful space. You can find out everything via Google.
Absolutely.
Do your homework. Send your books out very targetedly, your manuscript out, and then you have a higher chance of not getting rejected. But rejection is a part of the process. Everyone goes through it. So I would say.
No, I think that's really very, very sage advice. So, Atima, other thing that I've heard a lot of authors say is that, look, I have spent days and burned midnight oil writing this manuscript. I will not allow even a word to be changed by the commissioning editor. Now, I as a person who's been into selling a long time, I find this a little odd. But what's your take? Are you so attached to your writing that you can't modify it if the commissioning editor says please modify something?
See, I'm an editor. I'm an editor by profession. So my job is to actually edit other people's writings. That's what I've been doing for the past 30 years. So I don't see any harm. I mean, I completely understand that when you are too close to a project writing, you tend to probably stop seeing flaws after a while. And outside view is very important.
Mhm.
Uh, because I've been in the field, I realize that it's very, very important to take the suggestions and let the third person or the second person have a look and give you where the gaps are in your plot, to look at, where your writing is going wrong. Are you, being too flowery in your language, or you're wandering off the point because you're trying to be, so those kind of little feedbacks are actually very good. We have to look at it as something that will improve the book. It'll take it to the next level. I mean, nobody's perfect, and I don't think we should give our writing so much
Absolutely.
importance and think that we've just
We can't change.
nobody can
True.
improve
True.
upon us. So I think it's very important to take the advice and improve the book that we have written.
Wonderful. Thank you, Atima. Okay, Suchita, any thoughts on the rejection part and how you cope with the first rejections or any adverse feedback on the first manuscript?
I would agree with Kiran when she says that rejection is very much a part of this business. So you have to be thick-skinned enough to take it, and not even thick-skinned, you have to take it in a very positive manner. Because if somebody is, if it is being rejected, it is certainly for a reason.
Hmm.
And there is always room for improvement. Why they have rejected, what is it that they want? See, that way there's always a gap between what a writer wants to write and what a publisher wants to publish. I know so many of my novels, when it goes to the editing table, there are certain passages, maybe literary flowery or literary language, which are very dear to my heart, and I want to retain those. But the editor would always find it like maybe flowery, or maybe not to the point, or maybe something that is redundant and that can be done away with. So therein you have to sometimes think from their perspective also, and you have to take it that probably they're chiseling your product. So
Absolutely.
yeah, and Atma, like Atma said, that an objective view is certainly necessary, because a novel or a book of fiction is your baby. You do
Hmm.
not see any flaws in it. You like it.
True.
You
True.
find no fault in your baby. So it's only a third person who can tell you, like, this can be cut, or this is redundant, and this can be written in a sharper way, and
True.
we'll chisel your process. So that way, I think it's a part of it, and we should react very
Absolutely.
positively.
And I do feel that because the publishers are in touch with the reading audience and they have a sense of what the market might want,
Yes.
whatever they tell us as authors is
हेलो
feedback to make the book much
हेलो
better. Yes,
हाँ
Miss
सुधा
Singh,
मैं ना कोशिश कर रही हूँ
I think we have somebody who's talking
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
the screen. Anyway, so now we have a little time for some questions, and we'll come back to the panelists after that. But I see a few questions in the chat box. So let's take up the first one. Yeah, there is a question from somebody saying that I can't speak English, or that person must be writing in Hindi or some other language. But मैं ये कहना चाहूँगा कि जो भी अभी बातें हुई हैं, ये किसी भी भाषा के लिए ये रेलेवेंट हैं। तो ये जो एडवाइस दिया गया है, ये जो आइडियाज़ हमने आपके सामने रखे हैं, इनका कोई इंग्लिश से ही केवल इनका लिंक नहीं है। प्रत्येक भाषा में यही पॉइंट्स आपको ध्यान में रखने होंगे। So let me take up the other question now. There is a question also from a gentleman called yes, Dr. Biswajit Kumar has written, some books on the lockdown, Ek Trasad Katha and Ek Kali Dunya, and these are on Amazon, he says. So congratulations, आपको इन ये कहानियां लिखने के लिए इसके लिए बधाई हो, एंड हम आशा करते हैं कि आपको कोई अच्छा पब्लिशर मिले. And Mr. Bilal Jan, another a filmmaker, has made 10 short films. And he says, would it be feasible to write a book on my films? Yes, I think, Bilal, the short answer is yes. You can write on anything, as the esteemed panel members said. And you will have to find a publisher only after you have identified, as Kiran very rightly said, a suitable publisher who is willing to publish that genre. Okay, another question. Do you think it's important for Indian authors to have literary agents? Okay, this is open to the entire panel, starting with Suchita. What's your suggestion on this, Suchita? Do you think every Indian author should have a literary agent? I mean, this is not so much a choice as much as the fact that publishing houses insist or don't insist on it. So, like I said, in the US, you can't reach a publishing house without a literary agent. But in India, it's not so strict yet. So, Suchita, what do you think?
When I started writing and when I wrote my first novel, I wasn't even aware of a thing called a literary agent. I straight away, it was way back in 2008, December 2008. So I went straight to the publishers, and maybe the business of literary agents must be there, but maybe it hadn't picked up, or maybe there wasn't so much of awareness at that time. So once my first one came, then the second was no problem, then the third was no problem. But later on, at times I feel that, maybe it's not a bad idea to go through a literary agent. Maybe they can easen up your job. Maybe they can get you a better deal, or I don't know. I have had no experience with the literary agents till now, but I'm open to the idea. I think there's no harm. Maybe as Kiran said that, she has a literary agent now, she can tell us better that, is it better to go through the literary agent, or one should coordinate with them oneself?
Yeah, okay, so let's
I
move on
have
to
had no.
Kiran. Any thoughts on this question? What's been your experience in India?
So I've published the bulk of my novels without an agent. Bulk of my work has been through commissions and through books I've written and sent out myself. It's only in the past couple of years that I've got very lazy and thought to myself that I'm done with the chasing and the running around and the waiting. And, it frees me up to, just write the book, and now it's your headache, you deal with it. So in that sense, it's very liberating. But I would say in India, we still have the luxury of approaching publishing house directly.
Yes.
We can, if you do your homework right, target the right publishing houses and find the right editors. And if your book is good enough, it will be accepted. If it is not being accepted, you also have the option of self-publishing. Amazon Kindle self-publishing is a wonderful thing. Many of our best-selling authors like Amish, Ashwin, Savi Sharma, and more have self-published first and then gone on to be very successful and then got publishing deals. So that is an option. If you feel your book is worth it and it's not getting a publishing house, you can self-publish. If you are like me and you would rather relinquish the runaround to someone else, please approach a literary agent, but do your research. Find somebody who works well with your temperament and mindset, because it's the luck of the draw. Your personalities have to match. You have to be in sync with your literary agent. Otherwise, it can be a miserable experience. So that's a word of warning, because there are wonderful stories and there are horror stories also. I will tell you there are horror stories. So please choose wisely. Don't just jump into anything. And remember, you do not have to pay a literary agent. They will earn commission from your works. So work out a deal with whoever you are, that you get me the deal and you can take your commission from it, because just be wary.
Yeah, in fact, there is also, I must also share with the audience that there are a lot of people who are literary agents, and they say, look, if you give the book to me or give the manuscript to me, we'll get you a better deal, financial deal. And I believe these people, But despite that, I have always relied on my connections with good publishing houses rather than literary agents. But I think, Kiran, that's very, very good advice about, one has to kind of decide for oneself based on the kind of story you have, based on the your interest in pursuing the whole thing yourself or not. Okay, Atima, there's a question for you, and this is a question that Mr. Ekar Singh is asking us, and he says, can we take storytelling as a profession? Now, since Atima had to leave her job only after she got the contract, she's the right person to answer
No,
this.
no, I immediately went back to doing my job. I mean, I took a sabbatical. I was smart
Okay.
enough not to depend on, to earn a living through writing. So yes, I think till you establish yourself as an author, if you're struggling author and you still haven't yet published your first book, or you're publishing your second or third book, you have to see how much money you are making. Is it enough for you? Are you making more while writing as your other job, your day job? So I think it's something that it depends on the success of your books. I mean, it's very rare, I think, except there are, of course, exceptions. But there's a very small percentage of authors who are actually able to make a living and live comfortably or just on their writings. So I think all of us have to do day jobs and be also writers on the side. So I mean, my advice to anybody is don't quit your job. Continue working till you start making millions. And when you do, then you're most welcome to quit your job.
Absolutely. That's very, very sound advice. In India, the earnings from book royalties tends to be a little meager. In fact, I was having a chat with my mother. Her latest book, A Kashmiri Century, was published by HarperCollins last year. And she's written in Hindi and English, and she's been quite prolific. But the other day she got a royalty statement. She said, "Oh my God, this is so exciting!" And why did she say that? Because all through her writing career, it's been there trickles, $150, $200, 300. Now this is a little bit more than that, so she got a little excited. But the point is, and of course we all joked about it, but the fact is that in India, royalty payments are still very meager.
Yes.
They're just good enough to show you income tax statement, but they don't add up to very much. Okay, we're approaching the end of this very, very interesting conversation that we've had with our esteemed panelists. So I'm going to now request each of them, starting with Suchita, to give our our audience some tips on the art of writing. I mean, not just tips, some final words really about what is it that they must keep in mind, the one thing that they must do if they really want to make it to the stratospheric levels of novel writers or novelists.
Well, it has been said by all the panelists, by Atima, by Kiran, that, maybe Kiran did not agree that, that you write about what you know best. And in certain way, I agree with her in that also. But I still feel that, to start with, you must write what you know best, number one. Number two, you have to read a lot. These days, the youngsters are not reading at all. If there's a choice for them, like they see Gone with the Wind on Netflix or read a 1,000-page novel, they'll probably see a movie.
Right.
So you have to read a lot because it widens the horizons of your mind. It increases your vocabulary. Read whatever comes your way, the classics, the popular fiction, the contemporary fiction, whatever. Then you have to write every day. As you said, probably 1,000 words or 500 words. Then one thing that, which I am not able to forget, what Mr. Khushwant Singh told me when I went to him. He said, when I sit in my garden at 4 or 4:30 in the morning, I know exactly that, this was a bud yesterday, and it has become a flower. I know exactly which bird is coming. Says, soak in the sounds of nature.
Experiences.
Respond to keep your eyes and ears open. and
Right.
it will fill you. Look at the sky, be receptive
Absolutely.
to your surroundings. It will
Wonderful.
fill you with pleasure. It will fill you with positivity. And that is something very important for you. And
Wonderful.
in the
I think
end,
that's quite sufficient, because one
yes,
point
yes,
to wrap
yes.
up. Okay,
Yes.
Atima.
One sentence I would like to say.
Okay,
I
yes.
remember what I mean, since I have been taught literature, what Francis Bacon said
Mhm.
comes to my mind, that reading maketh a full man, conference a ready man, and writing an exact man. That is the advice I would like.
Excellent. Thank you very much,
Thank
Suchita.
you.
Yes, Atima.
Well, I mean, I would.
One
I'll
final
try
bit
to
of
make
advice.
two small points. One, of course, I mean, I'm agreeing with this, that please write. It's very important to write about what you're interested in, what you're passionate about. Do not get pressured into thinking that, this is what sells. So that is one thing. Secondly, I think we need to understand that for us writers, we should also be like entrepreneurs. Book is a product. We
Absolutely.
have to ensure that we are marketing it well. So it is very important to ensure that the book is like a product that we have to sell. We can't just sit, say, okay, now we have, created something great and a great idea, and we don't have any responsibility further. So we have to be like entrepreneurs, create
Absolutely.
a product and sell it. So that is
And
very important.
wonderful. Okay, Kiran, unmute yourself, please. Yeah, sorry, we couldn't hear the first part.
So I just have a quote from Henry David Thoreau.
Yes, please.
How vain is it to sit down to write when you haven't stood up to live?
Beautiful. Very
So
nice.
please live a full life, a complete life. And it's only from your life experiences that you will get the emotion and the depth to fill your writing. That's all. People are in a rush to get published and to write
Absolutely.
early.
Absolutely.
Don't do that.
Very good. And I'm going to, before thanking our esteemed panelists, I'm going to add my 2 cents, which is, look, at the end of the day, writing is hard work. And it's a creative pursuit, which means you got to be whole-brained to be able to write creatively and have the discipline to sit in front of your laptop and churn out 1,000 words every day. So thank you very much. Thanks to you, Suchita, Atima, and Kiran. This has been an extraordinary conversation. And I would like to thank the audience for their presence, and also a sincere word of gratitude to Raghav and Cunsult for organizing this wonderful webinar. And with that, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Over to you, Raghav, to wrap up.
Bharat, I won't let you go so fast. There are 1 or 2 quick questions which perhaps deserve some kind of a response. So on behalf of the panelists, I'll request you to answer them, or
Okay. Yes.
so that will make it, they should have that sense of being answered. So I'll be grateful if you can answer them.
I'd be delighted to. So let me take a look. Okay, so yes, I see there's a question. There's a question from Mr. Aluwalia saying that technology has taken away the basic habit of reading even the newspaper. Yes, I do agree, but the newspaper is usually bad news. Novels can be uplifting, they can energize, they can inspire. So when you're writing a novel, I think there is still a big market. There are very interested people in literature, and I think it would be nice to keep in mind that for every good story, there's bound to be a fairly large readership. So let's not go by the fact that people stop reading newspapers. Newspapers typically are something which don't inspire or give a good feeling, whereas a good story does that. And to my mind, therefore, there will always be a ready audience for a good story. And there is another question from okay, thanks, Vivek, I see your point. And there is one other question which I see. Okay, are there any workshops or communities, either digital or in person, that you would recommend for burgeoning or budding novelists? Yes, there is no doubt that there's a huge ecosystem of communities of writers to be, and if you search for them on Google, you will find them. There are also lots of literary agents in India, in Bombay, in Delhi, in Bhopal and other places, who actually organize little groups, round tables for new authors, and it would be good to be part of that. Unfortunately, I don't have their details right now, but if you search on the net, you can definitely find more details. But I think what our panelists have consistently said is, don't worry about the craft as much as getting down to telling your story. The craft will find itself. And I remember, you know, every one of us has a unique style, and that style will eventually emerge. And then, with a little bit of assistance from a good editor, you can actually have a great story. So let your uniqueness come out in your story. Okay, Raghav, I think we've
Yeah, I
covered
think
all the
that's excellent,
questions.
Bharat. Thank you very much. Like to thank all the panelists here, starting with Kiran, uh, Suchita, Atima, and Bharat. You've done a fantastic job. You've been a
Thank
great
you.
moderator. You've handled this very, very difficult sort of uh, session extremely well, with great sensitivity and with great passion, which comes only from a very, very accomplished intellectual writer, thinker, which you are, all of it, all
Thank you.
together.
Thank you
So
so
thank you
much.
very
Very,
much
very
for sparing your
grateful.
time. It's been absolutely wonderful and delightful to have you. This has also been live streamed, so a lot of people are watching it, have watched it there, and we will of course upload it as well, so you can send out links to your friends who've missed it. Thank you very much, everybody. It's been great having you over here. All
Thank you
the
very
very
much again.
best.
Bye
Thank you
bye.
so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks,
Bye
Kiran.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Suchita. Thanks, Atiba. Thanks, Raghav. Bye
Kiran,
bye.
Bharat,
Bye
bye
bye.
bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye
Thank
bye.
you.
Wonderful.